Okay, so you should have out your homework and a red pen, pencil, something to write with. I'm going to go through this. If you have any questions, stop me. But here we go. All right, number 1. A equals 1, B equals -5, C equals, there we go, -14. If I plug it into negative b over 2a, because remember negative b over 2a finds the x value of your vertex. So negative b over 2a. B is already negative, so it becomes positive over 2 times a, which is just 2. So the x value of my vertex is 5/2. What is 5/2 as a decimal? 2.5, right? So if you prefer 2.5 instead of 5/2, use 2.5. It's a nicer decimal. If it's not a nice decimal, I would stay with a fraction. I'm going to plug it back in. So y equals 5/2 squared minus 5 times 5/2 minus 14. And I think I'm going to just plug all this into the calculator. So 5/2 squared minus 5 times 5/2 minus 14. You should have gotten negative 20.25. Did you get negative 20.25? Did anyone? Okay. So 5/2 or 2.5 and negative 20.25. Again, that's not going to fit on a normal graph, which is why you didn't get one. But we will sketch at the end. We also need to factor to find the intercepts. I'm hoping all of these are factorable. What method would I use to factor? The x. So on top of the x is -14. On the bottom is -5. Two numbers that multiply to -14 and add to -5 are -7 and 2. In factored form, that's x minus 7 and x plus 2, which means my x-intercepts are 7 and -2. Or really, the point is 7, 0 and -2, 0. And literally, you're just going to sketch. Okay, the ones that will be on your test will fit on the graph. There will be a graph provided for you, but I'm going to sketch. I'm going to say this point here is 7, 0. I'm going to say this point here is -2, 0. My orientation is up. My vertex is at 2.5. I'm just going to say it's here-ish. So this is 5/2, -20.25. And it will look something like this. Okay, that's really what we're looking for. Your vertex, your x-intercepts, and a sketch. Are we okay with that? Okay, let's do the next one. So A is 1, B is -7, C is 10. B is already negative over 2 times 1, which is 2. So 7/2 is the same as what? 3.5? So I'm going to use 3.5, and I'm going to plug it into my equation. So I'm using a calculator to do that. 3.5 squared gives me 12.25, and then I'm going to subtract 7 times 3.5, and I'm going to add 10. This one's actually not that bad. We get -2.25. Again, when you factor, you're going to use the x. So 10 and -7, -2, -5, giving you x minus 2 and x minus 5, which means your x-intercepts are at 2 and 5, or really 2, 0 and 5, 0. So if you're asked for the x-intercept, it needs to be written as a point. Again, you're sketching, so 2 zeros here approximately. 5, 0 we'll say is here. And 3.5 is going to kind of be in the middle of that, and -2.5 is about here. So here's my vertex. And my sketch. Yeah. How did I get the y? I literally plugged it in. So I took 3.5, so I did 3.5 squared equals minus 7 times 3.5 equals plus 10 equals. So if you have this calculator, you can type it all in without having to erase anything. Did you not get that? As long as you have parentheses around things and it knows the proper order, you don't need to clear anything from your calculators. Because you see how it says the answer? So the answer from the previous part then adds or subtracts to the answer from the next part. Number 3. Oh, this one works out nicer. So B is already negative, right? A is 1, B is negative 6, C is negative 7. So it becomes 6 over 2 times 1, which is just 2. The x value of my vertex is 3. So if you plug that one in, 3 squared is 9. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Minus that 7, you should have gotten 3, negative 16 as your point. Okay, so everyone should have been able to do number 3. Did you figure it out? Okay. Again, when we factor, it is negative 7 and negative 6. So what is that? Negative 7 and positive 1. M minus 7, M plus 1. So my x-intercepts are at 7 and negative 1. So when I go to sketch, again, this is going to work out a whole lot nicer. The only thing is that negative 16 wouldn't fit on a normal graph. So 7, 0 is this first point, negative 1, 0 is that point, and we're just going to say that the point is at 3, negative 16 down here. Okay, so number 3 should have been the most straightforward you can get. That's what will be on your test. Okay, I will make sure that it works out nicely. There's not some crazy decimals. That's what you will see. Number 4. A is 1. What's B? 1. What's C? 0. Now again, we don't need C for this, but for those of you that are retaking the Mod 11 test today after school, or just getting prepared for finals, you need to know that C is 0. So B is negative over 2 times A. So the x value of your vertex is negative 1/2. And again, I'm going to plug that into my calculator. So negative 0.5 squared minus 0.5 gives you a negative 0.25 as your vertex. How do we factor this? How do we factor p squared plus p?
We make 2 separate p plus 2.
GCF. What does p squared and p have in common? A p. But I can pull out. So if I pulled out a p, what's left over here? P. If I pull out everything, what's left? A 1. Because remember when you distributed it back in, p times p is p squared, p times 1 is 1p. This was the issue we had when we were factoring. Now I still have 2 things I set equal to 0. I set p equal to 0, there's nothing I can do to solve, and I set p plus 1 equal to 0, and I get p equals negative 1. So my points for my intercepts are 0, 0, and negative 1, 0. This one wasn't that bad either, as long as you knew how to factor. Yes? So 0, 0 is the first point. Negative 1, 0 is another point. Negative 1/2. Okay, so it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little graph here. But it should be also on the easy side. Number 5. A is 4, B is 9, C is 5. So when I plug it in, negative 9 over 2 times 4, which is 8. Okay, that fraction is 1 and 1, negative 1 and 1/8. Not as nice. What is that as a decimal? Negative 1.125. Let's just literally just use your calculator. So watch what I do when I plug that in. So it's 4. Can you see that? Can you see that? Yeah, okay. So 4 times negative 9/8 squared. Because what happens, it's going to square what's inside the parentheses first and then multiply. And I'm going to press equals. So that's this first part. Then it's plus 9 times negative 9/8. So it's going to do this and then add it to that answer. And then plus 5. Do you have that decimal? All right, or we didn't do it. So this one was negative 1. I don't remember what it was as a decimal. Hold on. So then it's negative 0.0625. What was negative 9/8 as a decimal? 1.25. So there's my vertex. Again, you should be copying this down because you're going to get credit for just copying it. And I need to factor. How do I factor? Super X. So on top of the Super X is 4 times 5, which is 20. On the bottom is 9. Up here is 4x and 4x. Two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 9. 5 and 4. Okay. This side does not reduce, but this side does, leaving me with 4x plus 5 and x plus 1 equals 0, which means your intercepts are negative 5/4 and negative 1. Okay, this graph is going to be interesting to sketch too. So negative 1, 0. That's a little bit more. It's going to be, again, another tiny graph. And my vertex is here. So sketched it something like that. It's tiny, just based on if everything was by 1 unit. Scaling was 1 unit on the graph. Again, I'm not so much concerned about this sketch because the ones I give you on your test will work out nicer. But you should still be able to find the vertex and factor. Last one, A equals 2, B equals 11, C equals 12. So negative 11 over 2 times 2, which is 4. As a decimal, that is negative 2.75. And we're going to, again, take it and plug it in. So 2 times negative 2.75 squared plus 11 times negative 2.75 plus 12 gives you negative 3.125. Super X again. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 11.
8 and 3.
Okay, I can simplify this side. That side I cannot. So it's v plus 4 and 2v plus 3. My intercepts are at negative 4 and negative 3/2. So negative 4, 0, negative 3/2, 0, and negative 2.75. So here-ish, the graph is going to look something like that. So if you had to tell me what the most difficult part was,
fraction.
Just the fraction. So you didn't have any issues with the factoring?
No.
Okay.
Except maybe for number 4, just because.
Oh, number 4, because we just forgot GCF. So other than that, it's just dealing with the fractions. Does it help that I showed you how to plug the decimal into your calculator?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are feeling okay at least. All right. I want you to take this page and I want you to attach it to page, were we on page 62 yesterday? I want you to like fold it in half and tape it onto page 62 on top of the notes from yesterday. So it will be included in your notebook check.
When is our notebook check?
Your notebook check will probably be,
Next Friday.
probably not next week, probably the week after, the week of final exam review. Okay, so you'll have some time.
Wait, I thought